Hi, I'm Liz Sneddon. Let's have a look at the answer to question 3C. So what we've got here is we've got a friend, Terry, who is using some data, and he found that 45% of days in Ashburton were wet and 35% of days in Timaru were wet. And so Terry's constructed the tree diagram that we see below. Now we've also got a map there. Now this map is quite useful because it shows us that we've got Ashburton and Timaru and where they are. Let me just change my highlighter colour so that we can actually see this a bit more clearly. So Ashburton is here and Timaru is down there. So we can actually see from the map that they're reasonably close together. And then I think we'll talk about days that are wet or dry. I know that the weather nearby will be quite similar. And so I need to think about that as my context behind it. So let's think about that and let's have a look at what the question's asked us to do. So we're asked to say why Terry's diagram is not going to give us a correct answer when we find the probability that it is dry in both towns. Okay, so what we want to think about is on Terry's model here. Terry's model assumes that the chance of being dry in Ashburton and the chance of being dry in Timaru would be 0.55 times 0.65. So let's just work out what that probability is, okay? So for Terry, she is saying that the probability of dry in both towns is, what were those numbers? 0.55 times 0.65. And that will give us a probability of 0.3575. Okay. If, however, we go back to what Nancy said and that's back in A part 1, Nancy's diagram had that the probability of being dry in both towns was 0.484. So we are asked to do a comparison, to compare your answers. So we want to compare what the answer Terry and Nancy get. And one thing I notice is that Nancy's answer, this is a higher probability. Okay, so that the chance of both towns being dry is higher for what Nancy predicts than what Terry predicts. So then I need to justify that in terms of our map. And if we look at that map there, as we said before, these towns are reasonably close together. So I would expect that the chance of, if one town is dry, I would expect the other town to have a higher chance of being dry because it's close by. Whereas if we had a town that was a long way away, I wouldn't expect them to have necessarily any effect. But nearby, I would expect that the weather will be similar in both. So that's what we want to do there, is make that note. So we want to talk about the weather in both towns is likely to be quite similar. And I always want to put my because. Okay, I always want to justify it. So it's going to be likely to be quite similar because weather patterns flow over nearby towns. And so we need to think about why Terry's would not give the correct answer. So Nancy's answer is much higher. Terry's one is a lower probability, and we expect it to be higher because they are close by. And not only that, but we shouldn't be thinking about the fact that these towns are, the weather in them is independent. So behind this, and this is a formal idea that we do at level 3, but in level 2, we're starting to think about this idea of independence. And what does it mean when things are independent? And in this case, the weather in Ashburton is not likely to be independent from the weather in Timaru, that these weathers are likely to be connected. Okay, and so that's the idea that we are looking for you to be able to tell us. So what have we got? To get our achieved, if you manage to find the probability that Terry's getting dry is 35.3575, that would get you a U. If you get that and you talk about how there's some connection with the weather between the towns, that would get you a merit. But if you've got a clear connection between them and do your reasoning, then that would carry on and give you the excellence. So thanks for watching.